Hi everybody, Tony's right. Okay, so I'm going to do a twofold thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm sorry, a little bit about the conference I went to. So anyway, I am in Maryland, Baltimore area. So I went to the Baltimore Writers Conference at Towson University, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about it and where I see myself going in terms of conferences, because next year is AWP in Baltimore. Okay, so AWP, because I don't know the acronym. Associated Writers and Writing Programs. So they do something like every year. Last year they were in LA. They decided to do it despite the fires. And then this year, actually this year, hold on. 2020, yeah, no, they decided to do it. No, 2025, sorry. 2025 was LA. 2026 next year is going to be Baltimore. So, yeah. I live in the Baltimore area. I live in Maryland. So, yeah, so Towson had this. And then this is some of the people that were there. And so, yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. So, first off, I was late. As this goes, I had stayed up pretty late to do something, or I think I had either taken a nap earlier in the day, so I had a lot of stuff to burn off. Like, it was just a lot going on mentally. So I didn't get there during check-in. Check-in was from 8 to 9. They had a keynote speaker by Sonia Shaw. Here's who that is. And then the first session started at 10:15, and they were hour-long sessions. So you had 2 sessions, then lunch, and then 2 more sessions, and then like a reception. So I missed everything up until the second session. So essentially, well, I got there at like 10:45, 10:40 or something like that, because I was lost and I didn't know where the building was. And I knew I wasn't going to get there to get the speech and stuff like that. That was 8 o'clock. That meant I would have to get up at like 7:30, 6 o'clock. I wasn't doing it. So I got there 10-ish, but I missed the first sessions. So yeah. So they had 4 sessions, and you could choose from 4 topics each round. So there was 16 sessions total. So they had it broken down like poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and then like some other topic like dealing with publishing or editing or getting an agent, something like that. So you could choose from one, and then they did have sessions where you could get quick critiques of your work. So like bring a piece in, like one piece, probably, if you're fiction or nonfiction, and then like 1 or 2 poems if you're in the poetry, and you could get feedback from like some of the people there. So the first session I did was a fiction one, and the reason why I did that was because as a poetry writer, yes, I do like doing poetry sessions for workshops when I go to retreats and stuff like that, conferences, but I do like to also explore what's going on outside of my genre, because I'm interested in writing fiction. It may not be like 300-page novels, but I'm interested in like microfiction and nanofiction and things like that, and I just want to learn different things. So I did the fiction section for the second session. That was 11:30 to 12:30. Had lunch, ate, had a really nice conversation with somebody who was from Ireland and came to the US, and they were just talking about their life and writing and publishing and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm in a program, blah, 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 blah. And we were talking about like just publishing and how it can be really strange to be in publishing, because it's like really weird. So yeah, was just talking to them about that, and looked over at some of the books that they were selling, and decided to purchase one, so I'll show that in another video. But decided to get a book. Was going to get another book, but like decided not to. And then Towson has a journal that they run, and so they were like, these are all free, you can take them, so I took them. I don't have those with me because I had let somebody else hold it for my program that I'm interning with. So yeah, so the second session, I did a poetry one. So did a poetry session, talked about a few things with that. Then we had the last session, and I chose writing for children. So I chose like children's publishing for that section. And yeah, that's kind of what I did. I went to the wine and cheese reception. I just went to go get food and then dips so I could like go home. Go home and do what I, the other stuff that I wanted to do. Anyway, so yeah, my overall review as somebody who came late and stuff like that. I don't mind the time structure. I don't mind any of that. I think I was telling somebody, I think what I had a critique of was that I think we have to think about what a writing retreat or writing conference does and is for and who it's for. And it's generally for people who want to learn quick and dirty tips, have generative exercises, get questions answered regarding writing and things like that. And I think 2 of the sessions that I went to, I felt like we waded a lot through like random information and we didn't get right to it. And I learned for myself that I like workshops that are generative, and I like workshops that give me like substantial amount, like give me tips, tangible like practices, guides, things like that that I can use for things. Because one of the things that I learned when I ran my own workshop was that people were inspired by what I was doing and was like, now I have a little tool that I can use if I want to write, and I can take this with me. Versus like the workshops that I was in, I felt like we were just we weren't talking about things like tangible tips to do, like to move us forward. And one of the critiques I had, and I was telling somebody this, was that also people go to conferences and retreats when they're not in programs because they don't necessarily always have the community that an MFA student would have, right? Like MFA student or English Lit student or something like that they would have because they're writing at home, right? They may have a full-time job and they're writing, or they're retired, and they may have book clubs, but like sometimes people aren't as invested in the editing process because they're not writers. They're like readers, right? Like some people, they also, they don't necessarily have the exposure. And I'm not saying that, oh, the MFA students, stuff like that, have like the most exposure, but it's just like when you go through a program, you have a cohort of people that you're going through and you have actual teachers, versus when you're doing it on your own, you don't necessarily have teachers. And it's hit or miss in the MFA program, but it's definitely hit or miss depending on what kind of book editing, book writing club that you go a part of. Some people are less interested and stuff like that. And MFA creative writing programs, you're tasked with actually having to finish a manuscript in some capacity, whether it's a short story collection, whether it's a poetry collection, full length or chapbook or something like that, or a memoir or a series of essays or something like that. Like you're tasked with a final project, so you have to do it to completion. And when you're not in stuff like that, it may be harder to go to completion with stuff. So I think I just personally, seeing that and understanding that, I think the sessions could have been very targeted towards exercises to help people, and then processes to get their mental on board with like writing and completing stuff. And it may have just been better suited to have Q&A type things. Like, I think the first session that I went to, the fiction session, I feel like it didn't get it didn't get better until we just went into the Q&A, because I felt like he was more comfortable doing Q&A as opposed to having to lead with like a concept, even though like if you wrote a proposal for a concept, I would think, unless they just like threw people in there. But like if you wrote a proposal to like to facilitate a workshop or something like that, like I think like, you know, it just felt like it was a little bit of misalignment between like what the proposal was and what the actual like implementation and facilitation of that was. And I was kind of like, eh. And literally for the fiction one, somebody like got up and walked out. And I was like, ooh, like it's their right, because like, you know, we paid money to like be there, right? Like I got the student discount, but like, yeah, like without the discount, it was over $100. So they need to, you know, get their money's worth. And I just think that some of this, yeah, it could have been clearer. And I just think that workshops and stuff like that should have just generative exercises and takeaways and stuff like that in Q&A. So, yeah. My favorite session of the 3 that I took was the children's publishing like session, which was the last session of the day for me. I enjoyed it because I felt like children's publishing is a very interesting world. I would like to explore it a little bit more. And interestingly enough, I'm working an internship, and it's a nonprofit of a writer who did children's books. So it's kind of funny that like I got interested in it. But I think I was thinking my angle will be dealing with tougher topics, but I think my angle will also be cooking, because I am African American, meaning a descendant of U.S. chattel slaves and chattel slavery as an institution in the United States of America. And so like my cultural food is soul food, and I really like mixing up flavors and spices in soul food, but also introducing people to it, because I think people's misconceptions about American food in general, it's kind of just like there's just like a lot of ignorance around it and what it can be. And so I would like to write about that experience, and it's a non-immigrant experience as well, but it overlaps with interactions with different immigrant groups. So soul food is a very interesting mix of interactions with people. The foods that we like and the flavor palettes that we like are kind of interesting given our exposure to many different immigrant groups and then indigenous groups as well. So it's just an angle that I would like to explore, and I think children would be interested in it, and I think African American children in particular would have like a book that centers their experience with food. And yeah, and also dealing with a little bit of the shame of soul food, which is like a big thing, depending on who you talk to. But it's a big thing from what I see. And I was just talking to somebody about veganism and how Black veganism, a lot of it centers on like how unhealthy and slave foody soul food is, even though when you look into soul food, it is comprised mainly of vegetables, and eating meat is not practical when you run a farm, because you can't, especially every day, you cannot eat meat every day if you're on a farm. Like if you're running and you're doing subsistence and it's just you, like literally like the food to mouth, and you have like 10 chicken, you can't kill a chicken every day to eat, you know? So there's like misconceptions about that, and that's just not talking to older generations and not doing research. So yeah, I would like to kind of like do that and like teach about food, because I think literacy around food is something that I'm becoming more interested in, and I think children kind of deserve to know about food, like outside of like chips and stuff like that, and like sugary drinks. I think educating kids on food and exposing them to food and literature, in addition to actually eating the food and experimenting with the palate, could like help the self-esteem. Anyway, so that's kind of like the ideas that came up with that. But I definitely am going to look into some of the journals that they have there. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. One of them rejected my stuff. So. But yeah, like looking into the things, and I look into Sonia Shaw, and I look into the people that were also a part of this conference, like what they have written, because I also like to look at what people have written when they're part of conferences, just to get a feel of their skill level and their interests and seeing what they like, you know what I'm saying? So there's that. And then I got this little creative prompt for kids from one of the people. And then a poetry workshop checklist. And then the fiction guy did give us like thoughts and papers and stuff like that. And the poetry person gave me stuff too. So I'll look over the materials. It wasn't a bad day of writing. I just think that what is happening here? I think that yeah, it just the reasoning behind having a conference and stuff like that like should dictate a little bit more what they will do with the sessions and how they should structure them. So anyway, that was my review of that. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.